boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It's been a few weeks since we've done an update. The weather's been pretty crap, to be honest, and as you all well know, trying to build cars on the driveway fighting the British weather is never ideal. So anyway, I've just started getting myself set up. We are going to start tackling this rust. There is a lot of rust on this car. Some bits we've covered in previous episodes, strut towers, there's a few bits and pieces in the engine bay, but the seals and a lot of the floor plan is very rusty. Probably the rear end is half hanging off of it. The trailing arm pockets are probably rotten as well. I haven't actually got into looking in the back end. I don't really want to know, to be honest. It is what it is. If I look at the rear end and it's absolutely fallen out of it, then I'm just going to pull the plug on the chassis now. So best thing to do, I think, is just ignore it, get the front half done, and then I'll look at the rear. And if the rear's rotten, then I'll be like, well, I'm already halfway into it, so it won't be so bad then. Anyway, so I'm going to bring you along. So we've got our reinforcement weld in here. We've got this to clean up down here. And we're going to cut that bad boy out down there. And if I can actually pull that off. Yeah, that's not much good. Anyway, so what we want to do to weld them up, we're basically going to whip off the wheels, and then we can drop this down, get this out of the way. I'll need to take the wheel off anyway, so I've got better access for this nice little grotty hole. Right, the wheels are off, top mounts are undone, so I can access the top. Whilst I'm in the mood of stripping stuff off, I'm just going to rip this arch liner off because this hole is pretty damn big. So I want to get it as far into this side as I can if I need to, if it's rusty. So rip the arch liner off and then go from there. Probably going to pull this side skirt off as well. Just whilst we're in here, we'll have a good look at that and see just how bad it is. I've only had a peep from the top in like the year I've owned it. So, but yeah, arch liner out is 10mm bolts. Obviously I've already taken all the front bumper and lower under tray off, but you've got 10mm bolts. You've got one down here, one in this corner, one up here by the ABS sensor plug, one on the top, and then one on the front. So we'll just whip them off. That one snapped, so that's a good start. Well, that one came out, but there's not a thread left on it. That one's not actually connected behind the ABS sensor, so we'll leave that alone. No idea what's going on with this one. Also no thread, maybe? Oh, the plastic retainer that lives in the wing has seized onto it, I guess. Last one. Oh, that's good. So of 5 bolts, only one was actually doing its job and undone. Sweet. Right, arch liner out. Let's see how bad it is. If you notice when you pull these out, they've got like a rubber gasket. I won't pull it off fully, but it basically sits inside the lip on the back of the wing. So just remember, if you take it off when you put it back in there, or put this back on to make sure you put the gasket back in. Right, I'm just going to bring you in so you can have a good look. This thing is so rusty. It's ridiculous. So to start off with, front end, it's a bit surface rusty. The underseal's obviously failed, but still solid there. However, if you look up here, that's also very rusty. That's the original hole that we've come in here for. But it also looks like this part of the floor is non-existent. So you're going to need some reconstructive surgery there. Also down here, oh, maybe that's just the underseal. No, it's probably wrong. She is super crusty. Anyway, yeah, so we've got 2 extra holes to weld up, which is nice. Also, someone's done a brake line repair, and they've just put a join there, which is not ideal, but that's a problem for another day. Anyway, so why don't we get these side skirts off and have a good look. I'm going to bring you along with me. So on the top, they just sort of clip on. Just have to sort of pull it away. And then underneath, what you have is you've got these like, how are they there? Pull these heads out or down, and then once it's sort of out, you don't have to put it all the way out, but they do generally come all the way out, and then that bit will just pry out. These are plastic. I'd probably replace them if you're gonna do any work to the seals anyway, because 20-year-old plastic isn't great. Also, whilst we're under here, check how bad that hole is under there. I'm just trying to work out if this is the rustiest E36 I've ever owned. Definitely up there. The tin worm has well and truly got into that. What doesn't help is this car sat for a year outside on my driveway, and yet the carpet's still soaking wet somehow. So water's working its way in somewhere. There's obviously rot in the floor. So yeah, hopefully the jacking point is still alright. Probably not, but whatever. Anyway, I'll set you up, we'll pull this side skirt off, and then we can have a good look underneath it. Oh look, there's another hole. That's rotten. That's also rotten. Nice. Right, one thing to mention before you whip the side skirts off is at the back, you've got these 2 little clips here. Hopefully we can pick them up. Just down here. Now these are different to the rest, these 2. These ones you have to, as far as I know, the only way to get them off is this bit. Basically pushes inwards, because it's not got a true head on it. He says. So pushing that bottom one went in really easy. That one's patterned anyway. So they sort of push inwards into the shell, and then you're left with this bit which you pull outwards. They're right bastard, and no one ever puts them back in properly because they're just a nightmare. Anyway, that's sort of snapped off, but that's fine. So best thing to do is get that off first, deal with that, and then do the ones on the underside. So we've got more holes there. Oh shit. Ah. That's very frilly. jacking point. And there goes part of my floor.
I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, doesn't even matter. I had to fall.
So I've just prepped this strut tower. All I've done is I've got the plate that goes on there, drew around it with a marker pen just so I know exactly how much bare metal I need, and then just wire wheeled it with the old eyeball killer. So that's ready to weld on now. I'll do that in a second. I've just attacked all of this with a wire wheel. It's all pretty solid still, just very pitted. It's quite thick metal down there. I've got some rust treatment stuff to put on there. Don't know how good it is. Don't really trust it. If there's rust it needs cutting out, but obviously that's very thick still, so I'm not really worried. We're just going to slap some of that on there, let that do its thing for half an hour or so, and then stick some paint over it. So we're not going to do any further repairs down there, just basically make it look half decent and stop the rut spreading. But yeah, we'll get you set up and we'll get this one welded in, and then obviously repeat on that side. Right, quick little update. So first one's welded in. Obviously I'm no pro welder, but pretty happy with that. All I've done is I've just put a single tack on the inside bits because it sits lovely and flat, but the tower's slightly curved. So just tack, tack, tack on these inside bits, and then hammer these outwards just so you get better, flatter contact area, and obviously weld round. I actually tacked each piece sort of down as well, and then welded it. You probably could just run a seam, but I just wanted to try and get it as flat as possible to make sure the load was spread properly. But yeah, so that side's done. This side I've prepped, so that's now ready to be welded on. As you can see, it sits a bit proud. Obviously it's flat in the middle, so tack there where my thumb is, and then get the hammer on that, push that down, and then seam weld it. This bit here, wire wheeled that, and just put some, I think it's Cure Rust on it, some Halford's anti-rust stuff, just sort of seals it, so that's dried now. So by the time we come to stick some primer on these, I can slap a bit on there and then that's done. Obviously it's not the best job in the world. Ideally you'd want to rip the engine bay out, take everything out of this engine bay, bare metal it, but for this shell it's probably not worth it. It's not a clean enough shell to warrant doing that kind of rester one, but anyway, we'll just make it look presentable. Okay, so they're all welded up. The strut tower reinforcements, as I said before, you can get them on my website. I'll drop a link to them in the description. Primarily they're for track cars, slam stance cars with like stiff suspension, that kind of stuff. They don't normally fail, or you don't really get cracks in the strut towers on like a standard car, but obviously a lot of people modify these, so pretty common practice to see cracks and stuff these days. So yeah, just inspect. If you have got any actual cracks, what you want to do is drill out the end of each crack just with like a 6mm drill bit or something like that, just to stop it spreading. Obviously then weld that up, grind that flat, and then weld one of these plates on the top. So there we go, that's that side done, seam welded, and that side. Put a lot of heat into them. You probably noticed it catching fire like permanently. There's a lot of old paint and stuff from previous, or when the car was new, but also looked like someone had recently put some hammerite under there, so there's plenty of stuff to burn off, but I don't really care about that because you'd need to wire wheel the underside and get some paint on there anyway at some point. So if I show you underneath, there's plenty of underseal and all crap under there, so we'll wire wheel that in a bit and get some paint on there and fresh underseal. Well, probably do that another time. We've got bigger issues, namely those 3 holes and the big one underneath. But anyway, so they're done. Just let them cool down before I'm probably going to flap this to top just to make sure that any high spots are leveled off in case I want to run a strut brace at a later date. That's all done, dry, ready for paint as well. So yeah, next thing is oh, I'll show you what we bought. So the plan with this is, rather than spend crazy money, strip the whole engine bay, spend ages on it, I just want to keep it a usable cheap car. I have bought some paint from eBay. So this is pre-mixed, not a lot, only small cans, but it's primer, colour, or base coat, and a lacquer, and supposedly the same colour as the car. Probably won't be, but you know, we'll give it a go. But yeah, because it's in the engine bay, I was like, you know, it's not going to get a lot of sun or whatever to bake it, so it should do for a couple of years. But yeah, supposedly BMW Arctic Silver. So we'll give that a go in a bit, see how it turns out. Probably terribly, but you know, whatever. Right, next bit to do. Let's get this bad boy welded in. Our nice new battery cable mount. So let's get some cutting done. Ignore this hole. So I've cut out this piece. Where is it? This piece. As you can see, this is how it looked in the engine bay. Obviously it was a pretty big hole, but it didn't look that bad. But the whole thing is rusty as hell on the back, so it just goes to show what you actually see. You think, oh, it's just like 50mm hole, something like that, but you get the other side of it and it's like double the size. So anyway, it's not really a problem because I've got this giant donor panel. So to take that off, pretty straightforward. Just ground back this underseal, figured out where it's clean. I've still got to grind this back more just to get rid of this because it loves to catch fire, this old BMW underseal, so we'll come back a bit further in a minute. Anyway, cut that out, and then there's 2 spot welds here just to pull out. So then that's my donor piece. So I cut this from a convertible from a good mate last year because I knew I'd need this at some point. So it's got the mount on it already. We could have reused our mount, but it's already on there, so happy days. So we actually only need a tiny little bit here, literally like that. So anyway, what I've done, turn it over, laid that on top roughly, marked out with a pen. I'm going to cut that out. What I have done first, obviously there's these 2 spot welds, so I need to be able to weld this back into the chassis onto those 2 bits there. So what I've done is drilled through these spot welds all the way through, and then it will be perfectly aligned, ready to go back on the car. So next I'm just going to whip this out with a grinder. That's all now prepped, clean that up lovely, and then the donor plate or replacement plate is all done, prepped, cleaned the edges on both sides, and then that fits in there lovely. So we're just going to get that welded up. I'll try and set you up so you can see it as I'm welding it in. That fits in there beautifully. I've got some magnets to hold it in place. But yeah, it's good to weld. Okay, and then that's the welded patch in there. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but I'm not going to grind off too much of that metal because I want the engine bay side to look really good and almost not know it's never been done. So this side I'm going to leave the welds pretty tall. Super thin metal that, so real pain in the ass to weld. But anyway, it's done. It's in there. This is lovely and solid. The mount, which is nice. I haven't got a sander, but I need one of those little sander things. I don't know what they're called, but see if my mate's got one of them that I could borrow, and I can just give this a little tidy up, flatten most of it down. As I say, if I leave it pretty thick on the underside, then sorting that out will be fairly straightforward. So yeah, all done. Right, we are done and dusted with the strut towers. They're painted. Obviously engine bay needs painting properly, but that's a job for a different day. The main thing is strut towers are reinforced. That horrendous bit of rot where the battery mount was is done. I need to get a better little sandy thing just to take off the top of the welds on the inside of the engine bay. I've done what I can with the grinder, but you can't get in there properly, so I need to get like a mini grinder or something. And a little touch of filler, and then that should be good, and you shouldn't be able to tell that it was ever repaired, which is the idea. Anyway, so that's that for today's video. Obviously it's a lot rustier than I expected. I expected rust. I kind of knew it was pretty rusty, but it's very, very rusty. So we're going to need to repair most of the driver jacking point and the seal, a little bit of the inner seal, and then there's quite a bit in that inner arch. I'll put some pictures up, or I may have already done it, and you can see just how much needs doing. What I'm probably going to do next is no more welding. I can't really be bothered. I hate it. It's real mucky, dirty work, as you can tell. Next thing, I want to get the engine back in and running, so I need to pull the gearbox off the old engine. I need to check the clutch and flywheel, see what setup I'm going to run, and then hopefully slap it back in the hole, and at least hear it run, bleed it up, get the front end back on. That'd be great, because I've got parts everywhere at the moment and it's just a nightmare. The welding and stuff can be done with the front end and engine all back in now, so there's no point not putting the engine back in. So I think the next episode will be engine installed, and get the gearbox swapped, engine installed, get the front end back on, get it running. I'm not sure we're going to have a running and driving video just yet, because I want to sort out the front arches or the inner arches before I put all the suspension back on and bolt it all up for good. So I think the engine in, then attack the inner arches, and then see where we are. Before I MOT it, I'm obviously going to need to fix this driver's seal, because it is damn rusty. But we can do that in probably a weekend. That's no big deal. Just need to... hopefully the British weather decides to play ball. Anyway, cheers for watching. Obviously, if you want to like and subscribe, that would be amazing. Thank you to everyone who's watched so far. I've had way more people watching than I expected, so hopefully you're still enjoying the content. Obviously, if you've got any tips or suggestions or anything you want me to do, just let me know. And also, there is going to be some different content coming up soon. We've got a E39 I've just purchased, which I wanted some parts off for another car, but it was cheap and we've got to do something with it. So we might slam it, we might destroy it, we might turn it into a drift car. I don't know. We'll do something with it. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled and keep an eye out for the next episode.